Okay, in this sixth session of the ethnography, we are going to be talking about a little bit the same thing, the corruption of academic purpose, which is the search for truth in the pursuit of political interest and the defense of the authority. We have seen how the committees that rule invariably on the side of the authority and cover it from scrutiny fail to acknowledge evidence and find refuge in interpretation. They systematically involve interpretation, and how the university structure is constructed by multiple layers of these type of mechanisms. So let me kind of move now to the slides with the evidence, which will help me to present the investigation. So I think the most interesting part about this session is that it portrays the university disciplinary system as such a mechanism of deceit. And rather than seeking truth, it is aimed to suppress it by withholding, manipulating evidence, and acting systematically in a conflict of interest while claiming interpretation as their alibi. The first purpose of the university, as we have seen, which is the pursuit of truth, is trumped by the actions of the authority in the disciplinary system. This session is primarily concentrated on the disciplinary system that I went through as part of this process, and that protects, shields the authorities, the different authorities, including themselves, from facing scrutiny. In the light of all this, I am wondering whether this idea of Nietzsche that all things are subject to interpretation, and whichever interpretation prevails at a given time, that is a function of power and not truth. It is perfectly descriptive of the processes that we are going to see. Academic authority always has the truth because it has the power. It is the moral of the master in disguise, despite the claims of democracy and fairness and so on and so forth. Evidence, as opposed to interpretation, is the enemy of power and its truth, and the disregard for evidence, which through the process is withheld and manipulated, is a common trait between the disciplinary system of Princeton and some of the processes that we have seen in the American politics recently. What does it imply for a university whose primary purpose is the pursuit of truth to disregard evidence and to replace it by interpretation? In this session, we are going to talk primarily about the operation, as I said, of the disciplinary system, which was directed by Tony Turano under the watch from Sanjeev Kulkarni, Dean of the faculty. And we are going to see also some of the actions from the CCFA, which play an important role at the end of these processes. I was notified on February 10th, 2019, that a disciplinary investigation had been opened against me in respect to my interactions with faculty members and students, in particular in respect to my letter to the students on November 11th, 2019. I was told that I had to go to an interview which starts these procedures, and I was described how the interview will proceed and what was the composition of the disciplinary committee, which was Deputy Dean Turano and an external lawyer named Anne Collard, from a law firm called Gibbons, which was supposed to be taking notes of my meeting with Tony Turano, but was allegedly not providing legal counsel to me or the dean of the faculty. To Dean Turano and the dean of the faculty. So the composition, I immediately asked whether I could also bring my own lawyer to the meeting. I was told that I couldn't. This is the committee, and this is the description of the committee. I think that it was quite strange that Dean Turano was already involved in two other issues here. One was the deflecting of my thesis complaint to the CCFA, and two, it was the cover-up of Mónica Ponce de León leave denial in December 2019, sorry. With this setup, I said, okay, I will do it, but I would like to see the evidence, which I have already requested repeatedly from both the Dean of the School of Architecture and the Deputy Dean, which is the student request for thesis advisors in fall 2018 and the leave award, all the correspondence regarding the leave award process in December 2019. As part of the investigation, because obviously you cannot do a proper investigation when the defendant doesn't have the same information that the accuser has. That is it basically doesn't happen in any legal process, but nevertheless, that despite the fact that I repeatedly asked for this evidence, I was never provided the evidence confidentially, as I requested to look at it confidentially. And you can see that I tried several times to get access to evidence through the process, and I even described the level of confidentiality that this could have. There was no reason whatsoever why the deputy dean of the faculty would deny access to that information. And therefore I also asked twice to Dean Turano to recuse herself, because she had been already involved previously in other procedures related to me and related to this case. On April 20, so the interview happened on February 18th, and on April 20, 2 months after the interview happened, finally I received the summary, as they call, of my conversation. And interestingly, this document is not signed. Somebody states at the beginning that that this is a summary that was drafted by Anne Collard, but nobody signs the document. And at the first glance, this is obviously not a summary, but rather a legal narrative that extracts parts of the conversation in order to make them into a legal case. The document, I think, is deeply embarrassing and was mainly conceived as an opportunity to counter my accusations that there was an illegitimate imposition of the coordinators over the thesis advisors in the thesis process, that there was a systemic miscrediting of the primary thesis advisors for a decade in favor of Professor Diller, that the legitimacy and behavior of the assignment committee was doubtful, and that the protocols that followed the denial of my spring 21 statutory leave were deceitful. Obviously, a summary doesn't have extensive footnotes that explains previous actions and correspondence which happened after the interview. Obviously, summary doesn't produce explanations which were not made during the conversation. This document fails also to record certain instances. For example, on page 13, the report, the summary states that that Inturano explained the process for faculty leaves of absence, and then offers an explanation in a footnote, which was certainly not part of the conversation, as a transcript of a record, audio record of the interview would demonstrate easily. Then there was an acknowledgement during the conversation that the mention of the primary advisor's name in the remarks sections of the students, which had been promised both by Dean Ponce de Leon and Dean Kulkarni, had not been yet implemented a year and a half later. And also during the conversation, I asked Dean Turano whether there was another department on the university where, if a student and a faculty decided to work together in a thesis project, they would be prevented to do so by the department. And Dean Turano's answer was a categorical no. And other issues. Sometimes it makes explanations systematically against my statements, and some of them are false. For example, it says that that the committee was approved by a faculty. The thesis protocols were approved by a faculty vote. That is categorically false. There are many aspects of the protocols that have never been approved or consulted with the faculty. Sometimes it uses my own quotes in an extensive manner, and sometimes it uses a kind of narrative, narrative mode, depending on what is convenient. And the alleged summary states, for example, that Turano stated that the crediting of coordinators and advisors are left to the faculty, and the faculty of the SOA had approved the current advising system. That is, again, first of all, this was not stated in the conversation, but it's also a false argument. As I said, the faculty has never been asked for crediting, and it is quite interesting that very recently, immediately after I was dismissed, I met by chance Professor Reiser, coordinator of the post-professional program, who was, he told me that he was told by Monica Ponce de Leon that his coordination duties and the course that he had, ARC 507, was no longer happening, and that ARC 508, which was the course that I had been complaining against and was driven by Elizabeth Diller and Sylvia Levin, was also discontinued, and that Elizabeth Diller had become a consultant. I don't know what it means to be a consultant of thesis, and I don't know how is it counted towards teaching duties. But Jesse Reiser told me that there was no explanation of why this was suddenly dismantled after I was dismissed, which makes me think that there was no faculty meeting conveyed to vote these decisions. They were made unilaterally by the dean without a faculty voting, and very likely, I think, by request of higher authorities. I asked Dean Turano and also copied Ms. Scholar directly to sign the document of the summary, because I thought that somebody had to take responsibility for this. And I don't think that Ms. Scholar, who is a lawyer and is therefore under certain professional duties, would be ever be able to sign that this was a a record, a faithful record of the conversation I had with Dean Turano on the 18th of February 2019. She obviously didn't reply to my request for the authorship of the summary, and neither did Dean Turano, after which I decided not to engage any further with this corrupt committee. So I also didn't get any access to the information I requested regarding the leave process and the operation of the assigning committee in December 2018. And so that is how this was left. Eventually, on July 30th, I got the investigation report from Dean Kulkarni, which apparently he had received on July 2nd. So that is just 4 days before I filed my complaint to the president against Monica Ponce de Leon for hostile environment and deceitful behavior, a number of other things, but also against Dean Kulkarni, Deputy Dean Turano, and the investigation committee and the CCFA. So by the time Dean Kulkarni gave me this report, he had nearly a month of thinking about my complaint, which was not filed with him, was filed with the president. But as we will see, the president moved the request to Dean Kulkarni, so he saw it, but there is no acknowledgement in this report that that they had a month of thinking about what they were doing. And this report is no less embarrassing than the summary from Dean Turano. It only interviews the dean and the members of the thesis committee. None of my former students is interviewed. As we will see, it makes false statements. Again, like the current process was adopted by a vote that is categorically false. And I look forward to the proof of that vote, covering the different aspects of the installation of these thesis courses in the School of Architecture. There are documents that are part of this report that are literally false. For example, this is allegedly a record of the faculty meeting on October 11th, 2018, which were produced for the specific purpose of the investigation by Monica Ponce de Leon nearly 2 years after the fact. And that include statements that are categorically false, like, for example, the minutes are conclude saying that there was a statement developed by the dean that was read and voted by the faculty that starts with the sentence, "The professional degree program will have two coordinators who would also be responsible for thesis prep." I can say categorically, and as I said already, a record of that meeting would demonstrate the contrary, that the meeting started by stating that these two coordinators would be responsible for the thesis course and the thesis preparation course, with no voting or consultation with the faculty. Then Dean Turano rubber stamps matrices presented by Liz Diller, stating that students presented co-equal first choices of advisor. That is categorically false. Students were never given the option to present co-equal first choice of advisor. It states that I abandoned students, but then fails to interview the students that I abandoned, which I asked her to interview because these were former advisees of mine, which at some point I decided with common agreement with them that there was no point in me continuing as their thesis advisor, because there was somebody else driving their thesis, and they literally told me unleash grades, which means that they had to basically follow her advice. And of course, this investigation finds me guilty of everything. And finally, as an addendum, Turano states that the following week, in response to an email from Dean Ponce de Leon regarding rescheduling of one of his classes, it was not only the rescheduling, but also the change in the nomination. Professor zaera-polo stated that he intends to submit a complaint against Dean Ponce de Leon for creating a hostile environment, diminishing his work, retaliation, and withholding and falsifying evidence. Dean Turano knew from December 2018 that I was intending to present this complaint. Dean Ponce de Leon responded that, in fact, Professor zaera-polo had created a hostile work environment for her, and that his emails are intentionally harassing and intimidating. A copy of all my correspondence is included in the attached document, and you can see whether they are harassing and intimidating. And so on June 18th, apparently before this was issued, this report was issued, Dean Ponce de Leon advised the Dean of the faculty that the hostile environment created by Professor zaera-polo has escalated to written personal attacks, threats, unfounded accusations, and demeaning insults, all of which has taken a significant emotional toll on her. These investigations will be investigated separately. And as of the date of this report, Professor zaera-polo has not filed a complaint against Dean Ponce de Leon. So this was allegedly filed before. Then 4 days after Dean Turano allegedly submitted this to Dean Kulkarni, the president received my complaint. So by the time Dean Kulkarni served to me this report, both him and Dean Turano were aware that I had filed a complaint already against Monica Ponce de Leon and themselves. Anyway, I recommended Dean Kulkarni to investigate the report of the investigation further because of all these issues. And time went by, and in November I had no news whatsoever from Dean Kulkarni. It turns out that he had asked for a supplementary report that he finally gave me on November the 2nd, so a few months after the first disciplinary report, which I presume should have been definitive. But in this case, I think that obviously the level of deceit in the report was such that Dean Kulkarni was obliged to ask for further detail to Dean Turano. And of course, this supplementary report finds me guilty of everything again. I had refused to accept thesis students, which is false. I have challenged the dean's warning that he would suspend me or dismiss me if I failed to follow the thesis procedures at the School of Architecture. But actually, and that I mistreated the dean and some faculty colleagues. But actually, this warning from Dean Kulkarni was void, and by then I had asked him to issue me with a written charter of the thesis duties that I had to comply with, and the protocols and the duties of other members of the faculty and students, since the performance in these courses, both of the assignment committee and of the coordinators, the so-called coordinators, was largely at their discretion. There was nothing voted or written about this, and I did ask Dean Kulkarni to supply me with a written document, which he didn't ever provide. And then, in order to legitimize the lies from Elizabeth Diller to the investigation committee, they went on and interviewed a teacher that was not part of the faculty, that was assisting Elizabeth Diller with her duties in 2018, her coordinating duties, in order to use him as an scapegoat. So Mr. Khalili agreed and accepted that he had changed the requests from the students following verbal conversations with the students, but there is clear evidence that the students were asked to submit their preferences in writing to him. So Mr. Khalili is turned into a scapegoat for Elizabeth Diller, and also they interview, and Mr. Khalili says that there were lots of co-equal first choices. I think every student will confirm that they were never allowed a double first choice. This was a story that was made in order to protect Associate Dean Paul Lewis from the fact that I caught him assigning himself as a member, as an important member of the assignment committee, a student that had listed him as a second choice behind me. And they also interview the student in question, and I think the evidence from the student is incredibly confused, and it appears as if the student was hoping that, despite the fact that the student had submitted 2 times letters naming, putting my name as the first choice for advisor, allegedly the student said, or allegedly said to the investigation committee that, in fact, the student expected Mr. Khalili to change that preference based on verbal conversations, and so it is also very interesting that now there is a very disturbing rumor amongst the students that says that both Elizabeth Diller and Monica Ponce de Leon coerced some female student apparently, and asked her to make statements to the investigation committee, and allegedly this student refused to cooperate and to incriminate me. It is also quite interesting that this particular student that was, in fact, I don't know whether, I don't have yet the full evidence, I am investigating it, but this particular student that was interviewed by, a former student that was interviewed by the investigation committee, was asked by Deputy Turano if the student was at all aggressed or felt intimidated during the interaction with me, to which the student says no. very clearly, but the fact that that question was posed makes me think that it is likely that it is this particular student that was coerced by them, but there was another student that may also have been a victim of this coercion from the dean of the school and Professor Diller. Then the Turano tries to legitimize the miscredit of primary advisors. And it is interesting how the registrar confirms that crediting the thesis advisor is done everywhere else, like in Princeton, which means that the primary advisor obviously is credited with the advice of the thesis, not some coordinator that oversees all the thesis. And so I think she manages is to confirm that this was an extremely irregular procedure that was taking place in the School of Architecture, and that was being consistently shielded by the dean of the faculty and maybe the graduate school. It is no coincidence that the system was immediately dismantled after I was fired from the faculty. And then those minutes that I presented to you before, which were produced by Mónica Ponce de León for the specific purpose of this investigation, because nobody was taking notes of what was being discussed in the faculty room on October 11th, 2018. I was there, and I can confirm that. And I believe that if a transcript of a record of that session was produced, it will become obvious that those minutes were false. So these minutes, which she tries to legitimize by asking a number of faculty to confirm whether they are or not true, are demonstrably false. I've already mentioned the sentence that in which Mónica Ponce de León tries to legitimize the system by introducing a sentence that was not part of what was asked that day to the faculty. So these minutes made it all the way to President Eisgruber's recommendation. So President Eisgruber's recommendation is presenting evidence that is demonstrably false. So this is basically how the investigation proceeded. Dean Kulkarni took the outcome of this investigation and made a recommendation for dismissal, I think knowing very well that this investigation was deceitful and based on false evidence. And as I have already mentioned, he resigned as dean of the faculty immediately after making his recommendation to the president, and the president took some aspects of Dean Kulkarni's recommendation, which was finding me guilty of mistreating students and other ludicrous statements, and presents it to the Board of Trustees, which affect my dismissal. So what I would like to show through this process is how this disciplinary investigation is actually a mechanism to discard, to withhold, and manipulate evidence which may have also the origin of actions of coercing students, that it rubber stamped false evidence, that it created scapegoats and that systematically operated in a conflict of interest in complete disregard for evidence, and actually with the purpose of creating false evidence. I think Dean Turano was willing to do anything she could to distort the truth and protect the authority, and we have witnessed similar types of behavior recently in the American political arena, where evidence is dismissed and denied in order to legitimize the actions of illegitimate power. So I think that that type of operation, which also often relies on interpretation as opposed to evidence, is very much part of what we see through this process. And I wonder whether again, whether Princeton has not engaged in the world of the has adopted the post-truth as the new form of truth based on interpretation, which, as Nietzsche says, once everything is interpretation, truth is a mere function of power.